So usually how I start these off is like just having you introduce yourself and like what you do and then have a few questions and then open it up.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. So, yeah, no, my name is Tim Christiansen. I'm currently a junior audio engineering major at Belmont University, which is located in Nashville, Tennessee. Um, we went to high school together, obviously, so we're both from the same town.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, no, I mean, I guess in terms of other stuff, I started in music really several years ago. It started out through doing sound at church with my godfather, and then it kind of graduated into doing little DJ gigs here and there, where I first discovered that, and I've sort of had the music bug ever since, and
Yeah.
now we're here.
And that's great because I feel like there weren't that many people like at our high school that were really invested in music like that.
No, I think and maybe if there were, I don't think many people were willing to share it.
Yeah.
It
Or like
was a really interesting time for sure.
yeah. I just feel like even if they were like interested, they weren't really willing to pursue it.
Yeah, no, I mean, even I honestly didn't even know if I was going to pursue it until senior year of high school. It was a lot of just questioning. I actually was going to go to college originally for some sort of degree in psychology or theology, something along those lines. And Belmont was still a choice because I heard about it through a mutual friend. So I was going to go there for those programs. And then I really sat back and thought Belmont, with the pedigree that it has or its reputation of being a music school, I might as well do something musically related. And then I sort of saw the connection between the DJing and hooking up sound at church, and then the program here, which was what was initially recommended to me. When I heard about this school, they were all about, you got to join that audio program and whatever. And I didn't see it as that at the time because I think there is that constant stigma between musicians of, how are you going to get a job with this degree, or how are you going to get a job with this? It's like, what are you going to do? You like a high school music teacher? And so there was kind of that sort of fear, I suppose you could say, carried on for a while, and sometimes it still does to this day. But I really sort of sat back and thought, if it's meant to work out, it will. And so now I kind of put all my chips in on the table in hopes that this can be a good investment into something and have a good return. And yeah, I mean, really, so far, I don't regret it at all. It's been a very great experience, not only in terms of learning about audio, but also learning more about myself.
Yeah. No, like I totally get that. Even now, I'm actually a communications major, but
Really.
I'm still a music minor because, but at the same time, I can't see myself doing anything else. So,
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, even when even when I started doing the whole music thing and started getting into audio, the biggest thing, and I still come across this, is you have to get over that intimidation factor. I think one of the interesting things about going to really any school for that matter, there's different colleges that are known for different things. So with Belmont, of course, it is music related. So there's going to be a lot of people who are really good at music here. And I just felt like I didn't have the appropriate background knowledge or secondhand knowledge to continue pursuing it. It was like when I first showed up to orientation here before actually enrolling, there was orientation. And I remember sitting in one of the classrooms and the professor was up there talking. And then you would have uh, parents of other prospective students, and they would be asking questions of like, my son or daughter uses Logic Pro X or Ableton Live. Do you all use that here? What's your favorite compressor? What's your favorite EQ? And I didn't know what the hell they were talking about because it never occurred to me. And that's again that sort of fear mindset came in of like, I don't know what a compressor is. I don't know what an EQ is. Should I even be here? Like, well,
Yeah.
what if this is something, something, what if I need to be totally doing something totally different? Is this a sign? Like, what, how does this happen? And I remember really, again, just thinking and mulling over it. And I think the biggest takeaway that I've learned and that I'm still learning is that uh, you go to college to pursue a higher education. You're trying to be educated. You're trying to learn things and retain knowledge. And everybody's doing the same thing you are, which means everybody at this school or at any school is on the same playing field as you.
Yeah.
So yes, they maybe had like great background knowledge, or maybe they ran sound for their mega church back home or whatever, but they're still here and you're still in the same class as they are. That should account for something.
Yeah.
You're all starting from somewhere and you're all starting from the very same spot now. So it's an even playing field. And then that also goes into that other deciding factor of how bad do you want it? One of the greatest piece of advice that I've received so far is that you can never ever be an expert in anything, because if you end up being an expert in something, you stop learning,
Yeah.
and you need to always continue learning. And with learning comes making mistakes, and you have to learn to embrace that struggle and to accept failure. It's not fun. I don't like failing. And that was something that I dealt with a lot in high school, where there was just this constant pressure to perform well. And even now, it's sort of this instilled or subconscious or unconscious value in me that's still kind of there. And I think in one side, it's very motivating, but it's also very detrimental because it tears you apart when it doesn't go the way you want it to. And that's the thing with the music industry. It's very dynamic. So like things can go one way and then they can completely go the opposite direction the next day. And even all those who majored in like audio and whatever, how they really got their foot in the door was maybe playing music at a club or at a bar. It wasn't even an audio related thing that they went to college for. Um, and so at the end of the day, it's a matter again of how bad you want it. And sometimes it's even a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that somebody else who never went to school for the degree that you have, they end up having the same gig as you do, but they didn't pay enough, nearly enough money for it as you did, or whatever. But they just knew that person there at the bar. They knew that manager, and so now they're at the same gig. And so you're always going to have to start from the bottom, and you're always going to have to work your way up. But where that difference comes in terms of your education and maybe their lack thereof is that opportunity. When that opportunity arrives of like, hey, I don't see this fader working, or no meter or no sound is coming through the speakers here. What could it be? And you go through the troubleshooting steps of like, maybe this is what I learned in school or this. If you can figure that out, then you're guaranteed to land that gig again. Most likely, more likely than that other person. And so it's being willing to accept mistakes, which is very hard for me to understand even now. So it's just this very gradual process.
Yeah. And like with music, it's always, you're always kind of growing in a way. And you always have to use the connections you make and keep making more connections.
Yeah. One of the other things too was you when you're out anywhere, you're basically promoting a brand for yourself, and you have to be careful about that. When you think about that in that magnitude, it's a tremendous responsibility because, believe it or not, as big as people might think the music industry is, it's actually incredibly small. And I say that because there's always somebody who knows somebody else, who knows somebody else, who knows somebody else. You could be like 2 or 3 connections away through mutual friends or whatever to get where you need to be. Your attitude is, I've always heard it's 50% knowledge and 50% attitude, where you can have all the knowledge in the world and you can be a great engineer. But if you're just being an a-hole about everything and not caring and not willing to work with others, um, you shouldn't be doing this. And it's the same thing with the knowledge. But I think a lot of that knowledge, or gaining that knowledge, is the product of whatever your attitude is. So, I mean, I could probably, dare I even say, maybe it's 60% attitude and 40% knowledge, because you need your attitude to be in the right mindset first in order for you to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry if like you heard a ding.
No, it's fine.
I just got a new computer and I'm still learning things.
It's all good, man. This is, it's a weird time for sure. So
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
And honestly, I feel like another thing is like collaborating with people and having the attitude to collaborate with people. I feel like you learn and grow just from that alone. Like recently, I just produced an EDM track for a friend, and that was my first time doing like a full EDM production. It was different, but like I was learning, and I really like that.
Yeah, and that's I have kind of a different route. So like even when I'm at school and when I initially pursued this degree, I thought it was going to be something more along the EDM line of things, of producing electronic music, and it ends up being now that I've enjoyed recording bands, or going into sessions and recording bands that way. Collaboration is everywhere. So you can even think about it when you're in a live setting or at a live concert, and there's live sound reinforcement. People have to fly the PA up there, the line arrays. You have to have lighting techs, you have to have video techs, you have to have the front of house man, you have to have monitors so that artists can hear their own mixes, so that they know when to play that right note or sing that right note. You have to have patches and people to patch cables in and plug cables in and strike that all down. And like this is all in the span of of a 16-hour day, really, where you're really the first one to wake up and the last one to go to bed. Collaboration in that aspect, and even teamwork, is just vital. And then that's the other thing, is communication, which I don't think there's as much of nowadays as I'd like there to be. And maybe it'll change if I'm ever on the road, or something like that. But I remember when I was in class and we were trying to set up speakers, everybody was just trying to do their own thing and figure it out. And some people, because it seems like they knew what they were doing, others would just kind of follow them. But then we would end up going nowhere, and we would end up spending the whole class time just setting up a speaker or 2 speakers, and we wouldn't be able to get any knowledge out of it. And I learned that that was kind of like a test of like, this is why communication is important. You have to figure out who's doing what, and you have to take initiative. Like a great term I've heard is this idea of command presence, is what they call it, where I'm not, me as a person, outside of class and everything, I am rather introverted, rather soft spoken. But when the time comes for it and when it calls for it, I have to be more assertive and I have to take charge and I have to say, okay, we're doing this, because frankly, even when I've been in some of the classes here, it's like, not in a bad way, because we're all learning, but nobody really knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're just trying to, plug something in hopes that it works. And because we know, or we think we know what that person's doing, and we're like, well, maybe based on their past knowledge or something, they plugged that cable into there, so they must be doing something right. We're just going to follow them, and that's not the case. You have to just think pragmatically here of, where's this cable going? Where do I want it to go? How do I get it there? And you have to try to communicate that with your team, because if you don't, then you're running on a tight schedule of, taking forever to set up, and
Yeah.
time is money in some instances,
Yeah.
where venues and everything, they charge forever just to, or they charge an absurd amount even if you're 1 minute over the amount of time you booked. I mean, there have been instances where it was like, I've heard stories of, we would have to be out by 6 o'clock at a venue or something like that. But if we weren't out, or if we were still in there by at 6:01, they would still charge us as if it were another full hour. And
Mm.
so you can see where you're losing a ton of money there. And so it's vital to be able to communicate properly.
Yeah, for sure. So, I do have a few questions that like I want to get into, and then we'll probably just like open it back up and have more conversations like this because
Absolutely, yeah.
that's like the whole point. And yeah, so my first question is always just like, who is your biggest influence, like when it comes to what you're doing?
That's yeah, that's, I would say maybe a three people. Four people. I would say four people. The first two are my dad, and the second is my godfather, because that's how all that church stuff happened. The third I would say is NF, who's a great rapper. I've really, really loved his stuff. And then his producer, Tommy Profit. They're probably, those four are probably, like, without question, my greatest influences. And I think a lot of that is attributed to just the sort of sounds and the kinds of genres that I've really learned to enjoy, especially as I've gotten older. Um, I'm such a sucker for cinematic scores or movie soundtracks or anything. A lot of that can be attributed to my godfather. A lot of times I don't know, he'd pick me up, or we go to some restaurant and he'd be blaring Hans Zimmer in the car, and it was like the coolest thing ever. And then again with like NF, I mean, if I feel like saying a fan or being a fan of him is not, I I don't want to say that I'm like a stan as Eminem would say it would be, but I would say I think I'm above like a casual fan, or something like that. I think NF is without a doubt my go-to artist. If you were to like look at my Spotify Wrapped or something, it's just all NF, and it's crazy. And same thing with Tommy Profit. And the reason why is just because of that sound he has. Like, I would have never thought of hearing strings in the sense that he composes them, or produces them, as in like some other generic rap song. And I get people have like different tastes of rap and everything, but I would have never thought of like hearing a movie soundtrack and a rapper like come together and it sound as good as it does. And so in many ways it's kind of incorporated two of my favorite elements. Um, and I think that that's played a big role, a massive role in where I'm at.
Yeah, that's honestly like that's so cool because I don't know, that's not an answer I've received before. But I mean, I've had a few like producers on here, and of course, like their influences are usually producers, and to hear someone have like both is just it's different, and I really like that. And
Yeah, no, I mean, I I think I think there's something to be said about rap in as a genre in and of itself. And it's interesting because you can have a great rapper, but if your production isn't that good, then it's not going to be great. And then I guess no offense to like people who like the stuff, but like mumble rap and everything. I think the reason why people enjoy it so much is it's great party music. It's very upbeat and uplifting and everything like that. Do I understand what the guy's saying? Hell no. But I mean, it's something that they enjoy, and so it goes both ways. And so I think for me to have like that perfect balance or equilibrium of, you know, lyricism and production, it carried me very far.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna plug this real quick since we're talking about like rap music specifically. Um, Pretty soon from our like hometown back in Beckley, um, it's me, Jada, as of course,
Nice,
um, Isaac Oglesby, and Janae McMillan. All of us have been working together lately, which is really
nice.
nice. And I know like Isaac's raps and his flows and his like lyricism, it's crazy. And Janae's the same way. And Jada, like lyrically and production wise, she's done like some great stuff too. And it's a really nice team to have. So a lot of like releases are supposed to be coming out soon from us.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that online and everything. I'm really excited for that. I think that'll be great.
Yeah, it's nice to have that back home too.
Yeah, no, I mean, and uh, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but there's perhaps no better time to release music than now because it's something that uh, at least I need, um, and it's not like there's much you can do in terms of going to live concerts or live events,
Yeah,
and so always having that little spark or something in between is just always beneficial.
yeah. For me, it's nice because like I do have that when I'm back home, but I also have all of these connections up here and people that I can always talk to and work with, and it's nice to feel like I'm constantly working again because for a long time I just wasn't inspired.
Why was that?
I don't know. I think a lot of it comes from like self doubt and finding myself first and finding the sound that I wanted.
That's yeah. No, I think that's I think the biggest critic in every artist or in every producer is it's always ourselves. And I've always had the habit of thinking about something or having the expectation of something, but then never actually going out and doing it because I'm too busy still being in the thinking stage. And one of the neat things about music and just artistry in general is um, what it is art. This idea that you can build off of new concepts or be very innovative and think of ways nobody has ever thought of before. It's one of those other things too where I've always heard if there's always a rule, be sure to break it because that's the only thing or that's the only way things will move forward.
Yeah,
Uh, you one of the great things again about music is there's always different avenues where you can grow or where you can be exposed to or get new genres and new ideas from. It's not stagnant and it never will be because you think about how things were years ago and how far we've come in such a short time with technology. That's helped tremendously because it's helped even more artists or even more bedroom artists who weren't sure how to, you know, get certain sounds or how to get their music out there, and now they can do it with a subscription service.
yeah,
And it's I think in that aspect, in just getting your music out there, um, that's a great thing. Now, if you want to talk about money and royalties, I'm a little on the other side about that. I don't agree with everything there, but I think that all is, I'm hoping that'll all change um, pretty soon, and I feel like it will in the next few years or so, because um, I'm not one to be very pessimistic, but a lot of how recordings were done up to this point, where you would book a recording studio and you would meet the engineer there, that's going away. And there's even been rules now in Nashville where it's like engineers or producers can have a whole band at their house now, to do a tracking session or to record at their own studios at their own house. That used to be illegal here up until, I don't know, I think like last year or maybe a few months ago. I know that's a big difference in between, but still, it's showing that there's a lot of progression going on in a different way, which is all attributed to technology. And so then it also gets to the question too of like technology impeding on creativity. And I think to me, it's just all about how you use it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to make your life easier in a way of it being more efficient, which hopes to make you more creative. It needs to be easier in terms of finding inspiration, not easier to be the inspiration. Where, try not to copy entirely of what somebody else is doing, or something like that. It's okay, of course, in the beginning to start out like that, because you're just starting out. And that's where practice comes in. The more you practice it and the more you listen to it, the more you'll hopefully find your own sound.
Yeah. And I think at some point there also comes this moment of you have to put out whatever you have. Because for me, that first project that I put out in October, I was at a point where I decided like if I don't put something out, I never will. And it might not be perfect, but at least that way whoever's listening, they can grow with me as I learn to be better.
That was exactly, not entirely, but that was how NF was for me. Um, I I wasn't like an early fan of his back whenever he first released his like very first album, but I was there when he came out with his 2015 LP, um, and I like listened to that, and I listen to him now, and same thing with the production, and I can hear the progression, the different instruments, the different intricacies that he has in terms of whether it's his writing ability, or um, even how the mixes sound cleaner. Um, but even then, from a technical standpoint, of course, his latest album is his best work. But to me, from a sentimental perspective, the first album that I've ever heard from his is still my favorite, because it still holds that place in my heart. And when I first heard him on the radio, and I did not know that was a thing, I remember I was sitting in the parking lot of my mom's work, and then the announcer said like, "This is NF and blah blah blah," and I flipped out, because it was just that one moment where it was like, oh my gosh, he actually made it. And I remember when like this wasn't a thing, and I remember all this stuff happened, and it's really really crazy. And it's, I think it shows like, yeah, you can definitely do it, but it's up to you about how far you want to take it.
Yeah. Because even with that first project, I can hear it in the way I'm flowing and writing now that there's a difference and it's a growth. And I'm so proud of that.
Yeah.
A lot of the beats I'm using right now, for once I'm not producing a whole project by myself. For once I have other people and friends helping me because that first one, the only person working on it was me, which was
Right.
fine. But it's nice because where my schedule is kind of busy, having people that are willing to help is like one of the best things I could ever ask for.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that also like comes back to another point that I think about, which is music itself. So if you think about it, and this is sort of like a philosophy I've learned over time, especially at school here. Um, we listen to music because of everything. So we listen to music not because of the very end, not because of the very beginning, and not because of the middle part of the bridge or the chorus. There's everything in between. Every little part of music builds off of the next part, and every part off of that builds off the previous part, and so on and so forth. It all intertwines and interconnects. If music were just, and if I were just waiting on the end of music and waiting on that finale chord or whatever, then music itself would just be one chord, da, and then that would be it. You would just go to a concert and it would just be one chord, and that's it. And I don't know about you, but that's pretty boring. um, you listen to music because of, yeah, everything in between. And that's the same way you should approach, or at least this is what I'm learning, that's the same way you should approach life, is don't focus on the destination. I think a lot of times, again, I'm often caught up in my head about where I'm going. Well, this person seems to know what they're doing. Why don't I know what I'm doing yet? And I'll admit, like, it's very annoying, very bothersome, because it does. You feel like there's a lot of competition, but then you sit back, and then I realize, right, like, I've made connections now that I would have never thought of I would have made even a year ago. I've progressed so much in terms of mixing music and producing little beats here and there. I never could do that even 2 years ago. I've progressed so much in frankly what I feel is like very little time, that it's incredible, quite honestly. I remember when I used to I would buy different DAWs or different DAWs, because I always thought, well, Skrillex uses this DAW, so I need this DAW to sound like Skrillex, or Zed uses this DAW, so I need to sound like Zed, or whatever. And so I wouldn't spend it, and that's the other thing, is I'm very grateful that I had my poor parents go through like this whole thing of buying different software, and then I would find out, like, oh well, this one doesn't work, so I guess it's on to the next one. And there ended up being this whole thing about, in the audio world they call it gas, which is like gear acquisition syndrome, where I just started collecting software and collecting gear, that when I realized like all of them do the same thing, it was totally pointless. And that's the same thing too with like plugins and everything now in EQ. People always rave about, this new plugin, or Waves, which is a really big plugin company. I signed up for their email thing, and I don't know if I think I kind of regret it, because they always seem to have a sale like every day, and I'm always getting emails for it. And it makes me wonder how they're still in business with all these sales they have going on, because it's just whatever. But my point is like, a compressor is a compressor. An EQ is an EQ. What does a compressor do? It just turns louder parts of the song down, and so that it's, balancing it out. It lessens the dynamics. It decreases the dynamic range. What does an EQ do? Well, you can boost or cut certain frequencies in a song, or in a track, or in an instrument. And to think like there's so many different compressors on the market. So like you'll hear like, they'll have like Waves came out with the new Abbey Road compressor plugin that the Beatles used, and it's used to emulate the Abbey Road studios. Like, yeah, it's cool. It looks cool. it's a freaking compressor. Like it just does the same thing.
Yeah.
What are you why why would I spend, you know, $200 or $300 on some plugin that just is basically a volume attenuator where it's just turning down volume? I can it's in my software already in stock plugins, and people think that they can't mix in stock plugins. I've had to use stock plugins for all of my audio projects for school and for everything like that. And if you can get good at that stuff, then by golly, can you get good at whatever the other plugins are. But I really don't even think you need them. And like that was another piece of great advice that I got from a great producer was like he, instead of just focusing on plugins and whatever, because he knew that would be an endless rabbit hole, he decided I'm just going to focus on buying sound libraries and buying instrument libraries and everything like that. I think that's where the money comes in because like a stock choir instrument from your software is going to sound way more lame than the one you spent, you know, a couple $100 on. And then I guess that would lead to my third point is if you decide to buy software or gear like that, especially if you're like pursuing music as a full-time thing and you're at university for it, take advantage of student discounts. I cannot stress that enough. I mean, there's like you get 40% off certain things and it's just it's awesome. Or like you can join certain clubs or organizations like Audio Engineering Society, which is like I think $50 for a student membership, and you get like the Isotope Insight plugin, which gives you like all the data readings of, you know, here's how it should sound for Spotify in terms of loudness and blah blah blah. And it's like originally $200, and it's free with your membership. So you're spending $50 on this plugin that's originally 200. It's awesome, you know, and so it's just I'm gradually learning, slowly but surely, to just be smarter with my money, and also smarter with my parents' money, frankly, because it's and there's also that other fear again of like my parents have sacrificed so much for me to get here. Am I making the most of it? You know, being out of state and everything like that. Is it going where I think it should be going? And the answer to that is it just depends on how I think about it. Here's the inner NF fan coming out of me. If one of the great things he says is, if you look at your face and wake up and look in the mirror, if you think you'll never be great, then you'll never be great. Not because you're not, but the hate will always try to cut you up and murder your faith. And so it's all in how you perceive things, and it's all about how you think things through. If you think you're not going to be able to do it, then you're not going to be able to do it. If you think you're going to fail, then you will fail. You have to get out of that, and it's hard for me to do, but we're getting there. It's a slow and steady process.
Yeah, no, like I get that because I had to learn to be comfortable in the doll that I could afford that
Yeah,
that I was able to use.
yeah,
And I don't know why, but it's so funny that you brought up the Audio Engineering Society because my freshman year they did their convention in New York City.
yeah.
So my school, through this club, we took a trip, like a day trip to one of the days, and it was like one of the coolest things I had ever done, like and been to.
Really, I was always so curious in going. I remember I would going, or at least right now over the summer, there would be like little virtual panels based on the different chapters in the country, and there would be certain little talks that I would go to. But yeah, I mean, like, just thinking about it from like the free plugin standpoint, or something like that, or um, any like I know they host mixing competitions. They loudspeaker design, software design, anything audio related. It's there. And like there's even other conventions too outside of AES that I've heard of that are really great as well that I've been meaning to take a bit of a deeper dive into once I think I become more invested in them. I think there are some parts of this where it's very numbers based, and that's fine. I'm not opposed to that. But I think there are some things where it's like that person can nerd out a whole lot on that side of it, and that's not the side I'm interested in. And I think that's the beauty of at least my degree in general is what I'm learning is like there's so many different facets that I could go with it. Like my minor is public relations, so kind of similar to your communications major, where if I were to do a corporate gig or something like that, where if it was just like setting up microphones for the CEO of a company to host a talk or whatever, I mean, maybe that PR thing can come in handy. I don't know, but I mean, they kind of intertwine with each other. And there's also just it's the same thing. I mean, you can one of the great things or one of the things I'd like to do is work in film or like post production, do like automatic dialogue replacement, ADR, record Foley and record footsteps and just all that kind of stuff. I've always liked doing music, and I've always liked going on shows and going to concerts. But I'm also realizing it's a very demanding job. I don't know if I'd be. I could maybe do it for a couple years. I mean, people aren't on the road for that long anyway, but I feel like I could do it maybe for a couple years. I don't know with the heavy lifting and everything like that. It's not something I see long term. I'd like to do something though to just get my feet wet, to get some experience, which would lead to, I think, my ultimate goal of becoming a professor or a teacher for audio. That's something I'd really love to do later on in life.
Yeah, it's crazy that you say that about films because for my degree, it's actually film and new media, like the concentration. So right now, I'm taking multimedia production, and it's all about video editing and the sound for the videos and all of that. I mean, it's only the second week, so we haven't got too much into it, but yeah, it's cool, and I like the idea of having ways to combine what I'm learning in these comm classes with music. Because what if I have a friend that needs a music video and I can help somehow?
Yeah, right, exactly. And the thing too is again, um, if you want to really just in its simplest form, music is just a bunch of moving waveforms of compressed and decompressed air. Compressions and rarefactions. That's the scientific term. It's basically sound. Music is sound, and sound is everywhere. So you think about it in that aspect, music is everywhere. I'm at Kroger's and I'm shopping, trying to get the vanilla yogurt that I always get, and then I hear some sort of song on a very poorly made or sounding speaker. And you can barely hear the vocals or something, but it's still there and it's still sound. It's showing like it's everywhere. Music is everywhere. Sound is everywhere. Therefore, it's hard to go wrong, I feel, in a degree where its resources are available to you immensely in just about every possible way.
Yeah,
So I think with that mindset, that sort of helped propel me to at least this point.
yeah, no, it's just crazy when you really think about it, and you think about since since we went to high school together. This is something I think about a lot. Is there are a lot of people there back home that they don't. I feel like they don't take certain risks, and that's okay because we are from a small town, and it's not like you know the ideal mindset. And I just feel like this is like a life thing almost that I've noticed and I think about it often. And it's nice to have someone on here that knows exactly what I mean when I say this. But the people that kind of like do take the risks, such as taking part in music, like we're doing right now, there's something almost magical about it because it's not something you see from the place that we're from.
think one of the great things just about music itself is it's already kind of an off the wall thing. People wouldn't think to do it, I feel, as their first intuition. You're always asked that question, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And when I was asked that, I said I wanted to be a chef. I never said I wanted to be a musician because I knew from that early age, sadly, I guess, that like you can't you you wouldn't be able to go very far in that music or in music or whatever. So yeah, a lot of people I think um, are in that fear, and it's this idea of um, being judged. People
Mhm.
don't like being judged, and um, I'm I'm very fortunate that I have people behind me and supporting me and what I'm doing, um, because I think they can tell that it's something that I care about. I can literally talk about audio for hours or like how I go about mixing or editing a song for hours, and sometimes it when that happens or when I talk about that stuff, it's almost as if it were a test where if that person starts losing a little bit of interest, but I still keep talking like it doesn't matter, then that means I found my niche. It means I
Mhm.
found what I cared about. And it means I found essentially what I've always been looking for, what I've always been searching for and wanting. Um, I think I think a lot of times people they're and it's just because of how the world is. We love to compare ourselves. As human beings, we classify things. I'm a man, you're a woman. I'm sitting at a desk in a chair, looking outside a window right now. Um, because of that, and you can associate those words with possessions, then you're going to start comparing, well, this person has this and I don't, and this person has this and I don't. And what happens and where your character comes in is what you decide to do about it. I mean, are you just going to dwell on it and mope on it? I did that for a while. It's not fun. It's not worth it. You're wasting your time. Or are you actually going to like go out and do what you care about and making the most of it. There are points where I felt that yeah, like I don't know if I should really be here, or I'm going through like this identity crisis or whatever. And I think every college student endures that.
Mhm.
But I always go back to the same thing that started everything, and that was just sitting in my bed, listening to music, and wearing headphones. And I would do that. And I still do that. I just finished like an hour and a half listening session of just whatever songs. And does that have anything to do with my degree? Honestly, yeah, because it's listening to music and it's listening to audio and being able to break down and knowing that like, yeah, I still have that same passion, I suppose, for music that I've always had. One of the biggest things I was scared about when taking these audio classes was like, where is how is this going to affect me later on down the road? Am I going to listen to music differently? What if I'm not going to enjoy it as much because the kick drum sounds bad or like the singer just sounds awful and out of tune? And it's actually been quite the opposite. I've learned to appreciate it more because now I can know that just I can appreciate the intricacies of, wow, they got the kick drum to sound like that, or I love how they panned the hi hat this way, and so they automated it, or they automated it to pan, left and right, or like ping pong delay and bouncing, so it's in your headphones and it bounces left to right. Like those are technical choices made by an engineer. And you're a big part of that. A lot of people, yeah, they look to the artist to see or have a certain sound, but a lot of it too comes from the engineer. And a lot of times the engineer works behind the scenes. I generally don't like being at front center stage all the time. It's not, I can do it occasionally, I guess, but if I have to, but I'd rather not. And this is like the perfect medium for it, of just being able to do what's necessary and then going off from that. And I know I keep rambling, but but then it like goes off to the point of like the purpose of music. Again, of um, like a piano, right? A piano has white and black keys. You and I both know, even though I don't play piano, each key has different sounds. Each white key has a different sound from the other. Each black key has a different sound than the other, or a different timbre. They also look different. Black keys are skinnier than white keys. They're all placed differently. You can play the piano, or you can have your niece or nephew play the piano who are like 3 years old, and they can just slam everything around, play random keys, and it's just going to sound like a jumbled mess.
Yeah.
But if you were to play those right keys at the right time, you'll realize and you'll understand that something beautiful comes out of it. And now I sat back and I thought about that, and with like the whole, racism issues, not to be all political, although it's hard not to be in this day and age, and especially in an industry that is rather innovative in changing the ideals of people and their perceptions. It's funny how you can, I've looked at the piano and now I look at what's going on in the world, and it's made me realize music does something that no doctor who's done 50 years in medical school, although I don't think that's medically accurate, music does something that no doctor could ever do. Music does something that no teacher can ever do. Music does something that no first responder can ever do. Are those jobs important? Absolutely. I would not doubt that one bit. But there's always some sort of common ground. When you're at a wedding, you hear music. When you're at a funeral, you hear music. It's at the worst moments of your life, while also at the best moments of your life. And
Yeah.
so it's knowing that you get to be a part, or that I get to be the part. I get the honor. I have the honor of changing somebody's life with either a simple note or a simple tweak of a knob or a simple button press. And knowing that I enjoy it, then that means I found what I wanted and I know what I'm going after. And
Yeah.
so that's why. It's not because if and this is something else too, like if you're trying to get in the industry to meet up with your favorite artist, please don't.
Yeah.
You're you're gonna be disappointed. And I'm learning that. It's not worth it. But what is worth it is the amount of growth you receive from it. And the thing too is you could fail all your classes and whatever, but the number one way to just leave the industry and to not do music is to just give up.
Yeah.
So fail all your classes all you want. You're still going to learn, but it's still up to you as to whether or not you're going to give up.
Yeah.
And even though I don't have like a great physics background, I never took physics in high school, and I'm in a physics course now and I have no freaking clue what I'm doing. If I fail, I fail because it's just how it is. And at least I know next year I'm going to know that material better. And then that proves once and for all that, yes, I found what I'm wanting. Because I know even in the face of adversity, I'm going to power through this
Yeah.
because it means that much.
It's crazy that like you went to that point because I was in a writing session earlier today and we were brainstorming ideas because we're writing a song about fear. And something I said was, I have a fear that I won't have an impact on anyone. Even if it's just one person hearing your music, that one person, if it impacts them, then I feel like I've done something right.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah. It's a chain reaction. It's this idea that um, it might take 2 years, it might take 5 years, it might take 10, it might take 20 years. But knowing that you're making steady progress along the way shows that you're doing something. As
Yeah.
long as you're not, as long as you're not derailing and you're not losing progress and you're not worsening yourself, then you should be okay.
Yeah.
It's this idea of I like I don't have that fear, but I just have that fear of um like I'm a junior right now. I feel like everybody else is landing internships and I don't have one yet.
Me neither.
And so I think part of that is because of the prereqs. And I'm doing everything that the university's telling me to do and I'm doing it at the right time. But somehow I still feel like I'm behind for whatever reason. And I don't know where that comes from. I'm trying to figure that out. It could be the whole comparison thing or whatever, but I don't know. The point is I even if I learn nothing in my classes, which is false, but if I learn nothing in my classes and if I were to just go home and if I were to just try to show somebody who cared about music as much as I do or something like that, of like, here's how we can do this or this and you know, blow their minds or whatever, then I did my part. I'm
Yeah.
still doing my part. Um, but the nice thing is because you're learning it and because you're caring about it, you're growing and you're impacting people in a more exponential way. So it's happening a lot faster and it's happening a lot grander, I guess, in the more grand scheme of things. So I, it's time is the greatest healer. And time is what tells everything that happens afterwards and everything that happened beforehand. So it's this idea of like, um, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how I got here, but I damn sure know where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I I remember for college, one thing everyone told me that I should apply to at least one in-state school because safety. But I remember being like, no, I will not stay here. It's not for me. Nothing against the people there that I know and like love. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I knew it wasn't right for me. So I didn't apply to any in-state schools at
I
all.
didn't either. Um, as a matter of fact, I think I only applied to two because I think when I saw Belmont and I really made that commitment to myself of doing the whole music thing, then um, I was set. And I was just like, it kind of was like an all or nothing thing at that one point because it was, I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know where I wanted to go. And I remember hearing things from teachers about like, yeah, you should try to apply to an in-state school and whatever. And I look back at that and there's no way in hell I would want to be doing any of that right now. And I would rather be having these questions and these doubts or whatever that I'm currently experiencing, just like with any college student, about something I care about rather than some mindless degree where I'm working at like a desk job, 9 to 5. And that's definitely for some people. and that's great. That's why there's such diversity in this world, and that's why there's so many job opportunities out there. But it's not me, and it's not what um, I signed up for. Not it's not it's not what I feel is planned. Not to be all like spiritual or whatever, but really, I really don't think um, I'm supposed to be anywhere else. And I think it shows whenever I come home. I always get in this kind of weird mood of like,
Yes,
I
like
gotta be careful with how I say these things because I don't want them to stretch out. But like, I don't want to say depressed, but like
you feel
bummed
kind
out, kind of uninspired, where it was just like, this is clearly not where I'm supposed to be. And of course, with all the COVID stuff, I was home for like a couple months, which is the longest I've been home for a semester or whatever. And I just everything kind of fell downhill. Partly because I mean it was just like I couldn't do much. I couldn't
of
go out or really much. And then secondly, yeah, it was just like I'm part of a fraternity down here in Nashville. It's like I couldn't do that. I couldn't see any other friends or whatever, or and maybe we could do Zoom stuff, but Zoom's still not the same, even now when I'm down here. And so again, I when I come back though, when I come back to Nashville, it's always like this sort of switch where it's like, okay, now I can be back into audio mode and figure things out. And now I'm taking these classes and whatever. And then it shows like, yes, this is in fact where I feel I need to be. And so sometimes I feel like those moments where I do have to come home, or in those moments where I don't where I miss Nashville a lot. I think oftentimes those moments are just as crucial and just as valuable because if I ever make it to that point where I want to, which is, I know it's all up to me, but if I ever make it to that point where I feel like I've done something, I guess where I'm successful, then I can use that one moment that I didn't really like at the time. I can look back at it and really appreciate it that much. Because
yeah,
now the moment that I'm currently in, or the moment that I've worked so hard for, means that much more to me.
yeah. I know I'm when I'm home I tend to feel just stuck in a way because I've gotten used to being in upstate New York all the time. And that's for me that's normal now. And the environment is completely different. And here I'm constantly surrounded by these creative people and I'm always inspired by them too. And there are some people back home that of course they do inspire me and I'm lucky to have them. I'm lucky to be a part of that team. But there's a difference when you know where you're supposed to be and where you came from. Like that difference is it's a stark contrast.
Right.
Um honestly, I'm kind of happy that this was more like off book because I think it's better and
I like off book.
yeah. And like the whole point is just to have these very like open and genuine conversations.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think like every point you've made has been like amazing, and I appreciate you like doing this. It means the world to me.
Oh, really? Great.
Mhm.
No, seriously, because if I've been looking forward to this like all week because yeah, no, it's not every day I can talk to somebody about audio stuff, or like whatever I've learned, or at least somebody who's somewhat more interested in it. Like, I'll have like an aunt or uncle. They're like, "What are you studying in college?" And I'll be like, "I'm studying sound engineering." They go, "Okay, what's that?" And it's always not that like it's an annoying question, because it's a valid question. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think many people know what it is, but I always have to have, or I always can't think of the same answer because it's just so unique.
yeah,
And so it's often uh, I go in these like long tangents, as you're probably experiencing, where I can just blabber on and on and on and on and like not stop. And I think that shows, yeah, again, I've clearly found something that means something to me, and it's hopefully going to bring. It has to bring me somewhere. I can't say hopefully. It has to bring me somewhere because I've worked too hard for it not to happen. Like
Mhm.
I've 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 been through too much for it not to happen. You know, this idea of like, I remember, um, and uh, not many people knew this. I remember when I was doing my first gigs and everything, and having to lug speakers up certain places and everything, and heavy lifting, and like that was a thing, and like it was good exercise and whatever. And I remember having to move my car around and drop stuff off and set up for weddings and set up lights. I remember setting up for our school's winter formal that one time for senior year.
Mhm.
A lot of that too, I was out of my comfort zone. And the other thing too, which again, not many people know about, and I'm not saying it so that you can have pity on me or whatever. I didn't get paid for that gig.
Mhm.
I didn't get paid for I haven't gotten paid for a lot of the gigs. Or there have been some instances where like maybe I do. I look back at it now and it's like, man, I really lowballed them. Like maybe I should have charged more. But at the time I didn't care about it.
Yeah.
And now, especially with where I'm at, I still don't really care about it because that's not why I'm there. I'm not there to make money. I'm there to freaking play music,
Yeah.
you know? And so like that aspect of it, I think shows that, I mean, yeah, if you're trying to get into music because you're wanting to make like a six-figure salary or whatever, you know, there's the door. But like if you I mean, if you really want it and if you really care about it, there's no reason for you to go out of your way to impress other people.
Mhm.
Because it's all about you at the end, and it's all about how fulfilled you are. They always talk about studies after studies after studies of people who make tons of money and then they don't um, get anywhere with it. I can't remember which rapper it was. Was it Biggie that said like more money, more problems, or was it? I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
Oof. Okay, that's fine. Yeah,
I'm
I cannot recall, but I mean, it's a true sentiment. I mean, I'm not I'm not in it for that, and I never was. You
yeah.
know, if I was in it for money, then I wouldn't be, or I wouldn't have been at our church at like 9 o'clock at night, setting up for 3 or 4 hours just for an hour service the next day with my godfather, where we had no clue what we were doing and how to connect speakers and whatever. We just sort of bought stuff and was just kind of like, I think this goes here and I think this goes here. And then we'd have to push cables in and tape everything down. Um, to this day, like with all the speakers and everything we've spent, like we don't get paid for church gigs. I didn't get paid for the snowball gig. I didn't get paid for a lot of gigs, but that doesn't matter
Yeah.
because in many ways I've it allowed me to find something that I cared about and that like I've wanted to work on for so long. And again, like yeah, I think about like where I've come from in the span of like 2 or 3 years, and now it's like I wish I could go back in time and talk to my younger self and be like, yeah, that metal version of this song or whatever with what you were doing on those guitars, that sounds awful, but like it sounds goofy, and I knew it was at the time, but like it's going to carry you so far. And like I remember, yeah, I remember when all these things were happening. A friend of mine, we talked a couple months ago, and he was like, I remember when you sent or you gave me CDs of like your little mixes and whatever. And I was like, holy crap, I forgot I even did that,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like I went from that to where I'm at now. And it's quite fulfilling when you think about it. And I think like with everything else in my life and with where everything's going, I can see it going full circle. Um, doing audio now, ever since starting from like DJing and then and moving into church and then moving up where we're at now to, you know, seeing an artist like live in concert to now seeing them elsewhere and like being able to just figure stuff out as I go. I didn't know what I was doing when I first started. And in many instances, and it's the great thing about music being experimental, sometimes I still don't know what I'm doing. And that's okay. I mean, oftentimes that's where happy accidents come from.
Mm.
Again, there's innovation there. So it's definitely a great it's a great path. But that's why though you should pick something and you should work on something not because you're good at it, but because you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
You can be good at something and not be passionate about it, and it's not going to care. It's not going to matter to you. You're going to be passionate about something, you're going to work at it, and then eventually you're not going to be good at it, you're going to be great at it,
Yeah.
and you're going to build from that, and it's the same thing. So if you can find that balance or that one thing where you can be good and passionate about it, where you have the best of both worlds, then everything else in your life that has happened beforehand and everything else that will happen afterwards will all make sense and it all clicks. And when I realized that and I saw that, it was a really gratifying experience. And I was really glad like I had that epiphany